course, everything that it does here at 97.5 The Fanatic. You'll hear his voice on the pregame show tonight with me and Connor and Bill Colarulo. That, of course, the great Andrew DeCecco joins us. Andrew, good morning. What's going on?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing great. How's everybody?
We are great. And, of course, the conversation about playing in the preseason, whether or not it's going to happen, is still happening. So I'll ask you, I mean, you were at the joint practice, so you saw the intensity. I don't know if it was intense. I'm asking you if it was intense, yes or no. Do you believe, based off of what you saw in the joint practice, will we see starters in the preseason game tonight?
Well, based on the 2-hour-plus practice, and it was intense, I thought I primarily focused on the defense, but I thought they got a lot of good work. And the offense, it was primarily Jalen Hurts and the first team and some second team that got a lot of run. So I think knowing that, Andrew, I don't know that you can get that or replicate that in a preseason game. So I have to think just 2 days later, that work would suffice. So I would be surprised to see them in tonight's game. I think if you were going to play them, it would have been in week one. Had the weather been, different, I think you would have seen them. But as we get closer to the start of the season, I think it becomes more unlikely.
When I ask you, though, is that the head coach last year told us after the New England game that it was an error on his part, that if he had it to do over again, he would have played players in the preseason. How does he go back on that? He says he takes notes and he realizes so he doesn't make the same mistakes again. How's he rationalize it?
Right, and I was there for the week one game in New England, and that was a sloppy game. It was dreary out. I think Slay had an interception, but other than that, they weren't really able to manufacture much in terms of offense. But he also reserves the right to change his mind. He made that comment 11 months ago. You have different voices in there now, different opinions, and I also think that you have to take into account, did we get the work that we were hoping to get in OTAs and mandatory minicamp, which they didn't have previously? Are we getting quality? Am I liking what I'm seeing in training camp? Do I feel like the offense is where it should be at this stage of the, going into the regular season? If he is, then you can certainly make the case for why they're not playing.
Who stood out for the Eagles during joint practice the other day?
Well, offensively, Andrew, was a heavy A.J. Brown day. There was a lot of volume, but big plays eluded the offense. It was just very efficient, and there was a lot of intermediary completions to A.J. and Devontae. And there was a nice wheel route to Saquon Barkley about 30 yards where Matthew Judon, who's now been traded to the Atlanta Falcons, was in coverage. But defensively is where where I focus, and that was pretty much a sack brigade where it's easier for me to list off the players who didn't get sacks. I thought Jalen Carter was extremely disruptive. Jordan Davis was moving some guys around. Bryce Huff, to me, was the standout. I thought he picked up a sack, but he also was very physical against the run. Kobe Dean had 2 sacks. So I think that the Eagles' defense really rounded into form there. Granted, you have to take into context that the Patriots are not going to be a very formidable team this year, but I thought that the Eagles still capitalized nonetheless.
Are you concerned that Nolan Smith maybe isn't potentially going to make the splash that everyone's going to expect in year 2?
Initially, I was, John, because when he did flash in training camp, it's going against guys like Fred Johnson. It's going against someone like a Darian Kennard. Whereas when he's going against Lane Johnson, and to be fair, Bryce Huff has really struggled against him as well, you're not really seeing him make much of a dent. Even going against Mailata, he's just not doing a whole lot. But I thought going against another team, that's the best gauge that you can have at this stage about where he is. And I thought Nolan looked a lot more explosive. He used his hands well. He picked up a sack, and he seemed a little bit more active. But we're not really going to be able to know where he is entirely until we see him out there in a regular rotation and see if he's really able to make that second-year leap.
How comfortable are you with the defense right now?
I have some questions, particularly at the second and third level, because when New England was able to move the ball the other day, when Jacoby Brissett and Drake May were able to kind of find some success, it was getting the ball out quickly into the flats to the running backs, getting it over the second level right behind the linebackers and picking them apart with Demario Douglas, the wide receiver, some of the tight ends like Austin Hooper. And I think that's going to be a problem area. I think you're going to see a lot of teams try to execute the death by 1,000 cuts approach and try to bleed the Eagles to death and move down the field if they're not able to get home with regularity.
I'm looking at the Eagles as a team that I think's winning the division. And I said the other day that I wrote a piece for the Fanatic website that I think they're going to be the number 1 seed. But when I really do look at the depth charts, I wonder if there's just too many question marks about this roster to believe that this team is potentially New Orleans bound in February?
So I think you can look at it defensively, John, and say, yes, they're extremely lean at safety. Linebacker, I don't have as much questions as a lot of folks do. I know they're a little bit unsettled there at this point, but I think they have a lot of players who have different skill sets that can match what Vic Fangio wants to do on a given play. Where are you concerned depth-wise? Wide receiver?
I'm wide receiver 3. We've been talking about that one this morning. I also wonder if, too, we are just expecting too many guys who haven't shown us at the NFL level that they're ready to contribute on a 40-snap, 50-snap basis at linebacker, at safety, at corner. That maybe there's just too many question marks for us to just nod our heads and believe it's all going to work out.
Yeah, in the pass rush department, that's where I have my biggest question marks, because you're asking someone like a Bryce Huff to step up and play. He's going to have to, I imagine, play 70% plus of the snaps, which is what Hassan Reddick did. He's only played 45 in his career. So that's a big ask for somebody. You don't know if he's going to wear down, still be as effective as he was later, in spurts last season. He's not very great, not very good against the run. And then a guy like Nolan Smith, he's the X factor in this whole equation because he has not done it. He played just 16% of the snaps last year. Yes, he's flashed this summer, but he's an unknown variable going into the season. So when you have such a young secondary as the Eagles do, when you have a lot of question marks in your pass rush and if they're not able to get home, then I think you can exploit that back end a little bit.
We're speaking to Andrew Pacheco on the Comcast Business Hotline. What's the latest with the right guard battle between Mekhi Becton and Tyler Steen?
Yeah, Andrew, Mekhi Becton has a pretty firm grip on that job right now. He is very consistent. He looked pretty good in the joint practice, although Tyler Steen got some work with the twos and did look. He had a nice block where he put a lineman on their backside, and then he got to the second level. You like to see the athleticism there. But, he had some penalties in that first game. I just think Mekhi Becton has been the more consistent player when both players have been healthy and going head-to-head. And you just see the size and athleticism there. I think Jeff Stoutland's really intrigued with what he can bring, and he continues to widen that gap between him and Tyler Steen.
I'm going to suggest to Scott, our boss, that maybe you don't do the pregame show tonight. Because, I don't want to see your voice go out before the opener. We may need to rest you. We got to take it very careful here.
I'm ready. I'm ready for anything. So I'm a little bit different in that regard.
You are different. I'm not going to disagree with you on that one, buddy.
Andrew, last thing before we let you go is something that hit me, and we'll talk about this obviously as the season gets closer. Is there anybody that's on the bubble right now, making a roster spot, like a name that people know that's a roster bubble guy that could be on his way out?
I would say Avonte Maddox. Because if you have Cooper DeJean that's returning, which he did on Tuesday, and he starts to get up to speed pretty quickly, well, there's your nickel. Quinyon Mitchell can also play nickel. You added Caden Stearns at safety, and obviously if you're adding a player who failed his physical, you like him enough to know that when he is healthy, he's going to have a role. Avonte has, at least when he's been playing safety, he seems to be a tick slow to react. When he's going up in one-on-ones, he doesn't have the same foot quickness as I've seen. And I think he's someone that you can release and probably get on the practice squad and keep one of the younger players and not expose them to